Okay, it's on. Okay, we're going to start with, continue to Arovis. We're in Kuf Gimel, Seif, Kuf Gimel, Seif Gimel. Where'd it go? Sorry. Okay, here we start. Afilu ein koach be'eser lavado lifkom. All right, so the iser, that it by itself, that gets added into your food, it can't be pogim. It's either a good flavor or a neutral flavor, so it would have to be batal b'shishim, or else it's osir your food. However, only if it's pagum, it doesn't have to be shishim. So I feel in koach b'eser levado lifkom ela ayidei davar acher shemisayel, but by itself, it wouldn't diminish or ruin the flavor of your food. But if it has another item with it, this isser goes in with something else. Kegon shenafa isser lakadera sheyesh ba melach hatavlin meduchin. So basically, it goes in with a spice, or it's because there's a spice in the food. So now this spice, the flavor, whatever, the chemical, the flavor reacts with this isser that fell in. And because you have this salt or other spice along, or food, whatever, along with this isser, together it gives off a bad flavor.
The Ross says that Girsa should be Merubin.
Merubin is the girsa, according to the okay. V'almale hamelach v'tavlin shaba lo haya koach be'isser lifkom afilu hachi mater. So at the end, so even though without the salt it wouldn't be a bad flavor, but with the salt it is. It doesn't matter. We look at what the item is at the end of the day. The end of the day, is it pogim or not pogim? Right. So it doesn't matter if it by itself it wouldn't have given off a bad flavor, but because it's there and it puts in the bad flavor, so then it is pogim. Okay. Obviously, we learned already, I think, if it had a good flavor for a while, or whatever, it had a good flavor, and then later on it started to have a bad flavor, then it's already made it usher from the very beginning, unless it was batal b'shishim. But we, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. Let's say you're dealing with fresh milk, and then it falls into these spices, and then maybe that curdles the milk, or something like that, and then that makes it a bad taste.
Right.
Now, that whole mixture of milk and spices then falls into a different pot?
Okay, fine.
Is that the case? Or the problem already in the pot?
Either way, it could be, may or may not be a good example, but let's say it's milk that goes into meat. And let's say the milk would have a bad flavor that went into the meat. Or sorry, normally it would be a good flavor. But because in the milk, before it was added, you added salt into the milk, and now you added that salty milk into the meat, and that salt with the milk makes the meat taste worse, so then it's not a problem. There's no isser, it's of ta'arovit, okay? Go back to the halachas we learned in Aleph and Beis and whatever. So that would be an example. Or if there's already salt in the meat, and now you add the milk, and now because the salt was waiting for the milk with the meat, now when the milk gets added, it's immediately going to give off a bad flavor. Both of them would be correct. Now the Shach says also the opposite would be true, or the converse. I'm not sure exactly, but let's read. We'll read it real quick. Keshehu pogim mipnei she'ein sham melech otavin v'ilu haya sham melech otavin karoi lo haya pogim mutter kevan hashtem mia pogim. As an opposite example, that if you, let's say the milk or the item does have a bad flavor, but because there's salt in there or whatever it is, and it makes that flavor good, then that actually can hurt you, can work against you. At the end of the day, if it's whatever isser gets added benefits the flavor or neutral, then it goes back to the regular, you have to be batal b'shishim and whatever, and you can't. And fine. Okay, let's go on. Hopefully that was clear enough. Daled. Shemen udevash shel goyim. Now, let's say you want to go to your local goy and buy his oil and his honey. Right? It was common in those days. They didn't have all these hashkachas in the factories. and it was much more readily available to buy products from goyim. Afal pi shehem mevushalim mutarim. Even though when the goy made the oil or made the honey, we know he cooked it. We know he heated it up. Okay, we're not talking about bishalakum over here. We're talking about tarovis. So the case is he cooked it in his dishes. But for his dishes, he makes soup out of pork or whatever he does. He eats nevelas. He has non-kosher food. And he's using the exact same kalim that he uses for making his shemen and dvash. And the halacha is mutter. You're allowed to buy from him lechatchila. So I think it's the Shach and others who point out that there's number one, there's a heter of stam kalim einam b'nei yoman, which we're going to, I think, discuss more soon. So even though normally we say a regular kli was not used within 24 hours, and it wouldn't be oser the shemen and dvash, at least in a b'diavad case. So, right, we let you buy it lechatchila since it was already done, whatever. Modern hashkacha is usually a machmer to put their hashkacha on something. Once they put their hashkacha on something, they treat it as if everything is lechatchila. That's the whole question. Is that lechatchila b'diavad because you had no right to do anything? The company is making the food products the way they want to. But anyways, they generally treat it like a lechatchila. So, but anyways, here you want to go to the goy and you want to buy from him shemen and dvash, so you're allowed to. Number one, it's einam b'nei yoman. But the Shach says that's not the point of this seif. The point of this seif is to tell you, even if you know for sure it was b'nei yoman, or it's a factory that you know it's working 24/7, and you know for sure it's within b'nei yoman. Basar pogim et hashemen, because at the end of the day, what are they cooking there? They're either cooking kosher shemen and dvash, or they're cooking treif meat. What else are they cooking? They're not cooking treif, vegetables. We're talking about they use it for meat. And meat, by definition, is a taam pegam for shemen and dvash. So therefore, it's only pogim at the shemen umasricho v'chen ledvash. So therefore, you don't have. It's never a problem. Okay. Aga, v'yesh omrim. The basar eino pogim dvash atzmo rak mashke hanaaseh b'dvash. V'makom she'ein hefsed gadol yesh lahachmir. Okay, so there's Okay, so there is an opinion that says basar itself, if I read it correctly, could be pogim dvash. So therefore, if there's no hefsed meruba, it's better to be machmer.
It's not pogim.
It's right. It's not pogim dvash. It's only pogim a liquid that has dvash in there, a drink that has dvash in there. In other words, it's arguing on this siman. And obviously, when we buy with hashkachas, anyway, it's not an issue. But, okay. Basar chala b'yayin have lifkam umutar. And the Ramah points out that always meat or milk added to wine is always going to be a pagum flavor, and it's mutar. It's pogim the yayin.
Right.
It's pogim the wine. It's always going to diminish the flavor of wine.
But
it's never a
the flavor of the meat might be improved.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Okay. Fine. So the yayin might be a problem, but the yayin is okay in this case. Okay, don't confuse me. The yayin is okay. The meat obviously could be an issue. Fine. But all right, the focus over here is the wine. Okay. Hey. Let's go on to Seif Hey. Kol Kedera. Okay, this is the famous case. All right, maybe we should have said it first. Kol Kedera she'ena bat yoma. Chashiv Taama livgam. Any kli that you have lying around your house, the goy's house, wherever it is, if it's anything that has not been used within 24 hours, the blia, the taste that's in the kli, automatically we assume has a ta'am lifgam, and that's the halacha. Ve'ena oseret, and therefore it's not oser. The blia is not going to ruin the flavor of anything else cooked in a pot. Anything you have in a pot that gets cooked in a kedera that's not a ben yoma of the same 24 hours or the same day, we're going to see that's a machlokas. Here I'll just say, we hold a ben yomo versus an eno ben yomo. The distinction is, and that's what most poskim were showing him, it's 24 hours, ma'et l'eit. Rashi and Rabbeinu Taam holds it's overnight. We're going to see a machloket. Once it goes overnight, and as the Pri Megadim points out, it's once it's Amud HaShachar starts, then it's no longer considered the same day, and you don't have to wait 24 hours, you just have to wait overnight.
A whole night, like Deah?
So it's, I'm not sure how long of the night. It's a good question. Okay. Linas Laila. Okay, I don't know. So let's continue reading. V'nikret bat yoma kol zman shelosha tamet la'eit. As long as it's not 24 hours, it's still a ben yoma or ben bat yoma. Achar shenit ba'ha'isr. From 24 hours from when the isr was cooked in that pot. We're going to see a caveat on that. V'kevan she'avar alea meit la'eit. But once 24 hours go by, an exact 24 hours, achar shenit bashal ba'ha'isr, from when the Isser was cooked into that pot, then Nikret Eina Bat Yoma. So then it's called Eina Ben Yoma after 24 hours. However, V'im Bishal Ba Eina Bat Yoma. Well, let's keep reading. Sorry. And if you cooked in it when it's not a Ben Yoma, Hatav Shel Mutter. As long as obviously the ingredients of what you were cooking is kosher, it doesn't matter if the pot was treif from a goy or a basar b'chalav issues. It doesn't matter. We always assume, right? Obviously, it's b'di'evet lechatchila it's aser to use a pot, but b'di'evet the tafshil is 100% kosher. Tehave notein tam lifgam. It's 100% kosher. It's notein tam lifgam. Right. In the case of klei midyan in the Chumash. So if you understand the psukim, it's talking about a kli that was used within 24 hours. That's when the whole issue is, that's when the kalim of the midyanim have to be used. That's when it's a problem.
Why does he say Isra? There's halacha.
What should it say?
Nothing, even heaven. Isn't the halacha the same?
The whole.
Well, there's no problem. Everything.
True, but you can use it for milk and meat, the same thing.
Yeah, okay. So, fine. So that's by the klei midyan, or it's even if it's stam kelim ben yoman, and you took it for a few days, it could be in the pasuk. It could be referring to kelim that were used by the captives, and they were still cooking treif in prison. But that's the case in the psukim. So let's continue over here. Ve'im bishal ba b'she'ena bat yoma hatav shel mutter. We said this. Now they don't tell mifkam. V'hu shetiyeh mudachat shelo yeh shuman al paneha. Now, obviously, we're talking about a case that when we don't have to worry, that we say after 24 hours the taam in the kli is lifgam and it's never going to be osir the food b'di'evet. That's when it was a clean dish. But if you see a layer of treif, stuck onto the pot, so then that stuff that's stuck onto the pot, that mamashis that's on, so that is for sure aser. Anything that's mamashis that you can see ba'en, that's caked onto the side of the pot, even if it's 24 hours old, you see this in the Shach and Taz, even if it's 24 hours old, even if it's days old, we never say it's ta'am lifgam if it's something that you can see. We only say the principle of ta'am lifgam after 24 hours is whatever balua inside the kli. That's the principle. Of course, if you know that the food that's on your pot is putrid, it's nirkav, it's nisrach, and it's not ma'achal adam anymore, then that's obviously not a problem anyway, because it's not ma'achal adam. So you can't eat anymore. But we're talking about it's still... Then even the mamashis would be notein ta'am lifgam. Correct. I'm just stating the obvious, but they didn't say that. I'm just saying that. Okay. No, this, and the Shach points out, as we actually mentioned this earlier, the Shach himself writes, he assumes that all kalim for cooking purposes are clean. Because by cooking, When you're cooking, it becomes clean because you're dissolving everything. So he's always working on the assumption that kalim are again, maybe it's machokas, but he's working on the assumption that all kalim for cooking are considered are stam kalim. When you just pick it off your shelf or off the counter, we assume it's clean. So the Shulchan Aruch is talking about a case when you know that you see that it's dirty. For us, I'm not sure if it's on the counter, you call that clean or dirty, but certainly anything in the, you pull off from your cabinets, from your drawers, obviously that's for sure 100% considered clean.
And when he says that any mamashas, then that's not nosin tam gam.
Correct.
That doesn't cause anything to the stuff that's already in the walls of the kli. We're just saying that mamashas would need shisha.
Right. Only the mamashas is what needs shishim. Right? If it's not clean, you see mamashas on it, harehi kechatichas eser shalon nifkama. So then that mamashas is like a chatichas eser, and it's not pogim because it doesn't matter 24 hours from mamashas, and therefore you have to have, in order to be batal, you have to have the food in there has to be shishim keneged the mamashas. Exactly. Right. And that's the halacha according to all the poskim. Fine. Now the next, v'yesh matirin, is a lenient opinion. That's not the halacha. V'yesh matirin afilu bishal ba kodem sheidicha. Mesh matirin says no. If you have a thin film, some food stuck onto the pot, after 24 hours, even that is notin taam livgam, because who wants to eat some food that's been sitting out, a piece of film of grease from your chicken or whatever, a little piece of a strand of chicken stuck to your pot 24 hours later, he says that's also ta'am lifgam, and that wouldn't be a problem. A chunk may be a different story, I don't know.
It's be something that's sort of bought into the today.
Yeah, but okay, halacha makes no difference. We all say it's 100%. Anything that you can see and feel is 100% aser, and it needs to be shishim keneged that thing. We don't say it's ta'am lifgam. Okay, haga.
According to the first.
According to the first, which is the halacha, correct. The halachas, all the poskim say it's like the first opinion. Okay. The Shach and everyone who talks about it says that's what everyone says. Haga, v'im yesh shishim neged ma shedavuk alav lakuli alma share. And that's the Rama saying what we just said already. It needs to be shishim keneged, what's davuk there. Lakuli alma tzmuter. Right? You don't go by you don't need to go shishim keneged the walls of the kedera, only the mamashas, and that's the custom, and I know the halacha. Okay.
So that makes the yesh material okay with the shishim.
Yesh matiri means you don't even need to have shishim keneged what's davuk.
Right.
But we don't hold like that. We need to have, if it's a clean kli, then if after 24 hours your food's 100% glak kosher. It's bediavad, but now it's glak kosher.
Because we assume that there is no mamash.
Right. And if there is mamashis, you have to have shishim keneged whatever you saw there. Okay. And if you didn't see anything, and if it's a situation, which is most of the time, you can assume it's clean. Okay. Let's do Vav. Now, some point out that if you add a lot of peppers, a lot of davar charif, the Taz and others point out, we're talking about rubo davar charif. That we learned this earlier before in Sadi Hey? We learned earlier before that it needs to be, in order for something to be considered davar charif, it has to be a complete davar charif or rubo davar charif, not just a little sprinkle of some pepper. That wouldn't do it, because you go after the majority of the food to be defined as a davar charif or not. So anyway, so now you add, you're using pure onions that are raw, or pure or just radishes, or the majority is raw onions, raw radishes, or hot peppers, or whatever. So then you put this in a kedera, and the pot is more than 24 hours old. Stam kalim over here. It's more than, and you know it's more, or you know for sure it's more than 24 hours. It doesn't matter. Akol aser. Everything in the pot gets aser if it's a treif pot, because the churfe mashvile lishvach. Because even though the ta'am became pagum after 24 hours, the fact that it's super spicy, the spiciness changes that the pagam taste into a good taste. Right. So this is the halacha clearly according to the Ramah and all those who follow, all Ashkenazim who follow the Ramah. That's 100%. He holds us. Now, just interesting to remember, we learned the only case in Chazal where we see that the charifos can take something that's an Eino ben Yomo and make it kosher is not by radishes. It's only by one. Make it. Make the balua Taam mishvach. Sorry. The only time we can do that by chiltis, koret shel chiltis, and that's in Avodah Zarah, but it doesn't necessarily apply elsewhere. But the Ramah and his group of Rishonim says it does. The Shulchan Aruch, we learned earlier, says there's two opinions in the Shulchan Aruch. Stam is that it has no effect. Once it's 24, the kli is 24 hours. It doesn't matter if you put spicy food in there, onions, raw onions, it doesn't make a difference. It has no power to pull it out. Even a davar charif has no effect on a kli once it's already 24 hours. The yesh omrim, he says, is aser. So, and the Shulchan Aruch himself writes that whenever he writes stam v'yesh omrim, halacha kistam. And so that's how Rav Vadia paskins in Yabia Omer, and therefore for Ashkenaz, for Sfardim, it would be 100% mutter to take your, let's say your onions, raw onions, and cook it in a milchik pot that's more than 24 hours, and use it for meat. Put in your liver or whatever you want to mix it into wouldn't be a problem. The Kaf HaChaim writes,
because this is considered a stam v'yeshomer, even though he doesn't really say the stam.
This is considered yesh omrim.
Right.
Now, whenever the Shulchan Aruch says yesh misha omer, you never know what he means. It could be the only opinion, and that's really his stam, because one Rishon or two Rishonim spoke about it, and he'll just quote it like this way. But yesh misha omer can sometimes explain a sentence, or it could be a yesh omrim. You'll never know by just looking at that seif in Shulchan Aruch, but if we look in Tzadi Hey, it's clear, or he writes stam v'yesh omrim. No, this follows the yesh omrim. And that's why it's a yesh misha omer. So it's absolutely not a stira. The Kaf HaChaim just points out, though, for Sfardim, he holds that whenever the Shulchan Aruch writes stam and then is machmer by the yesh omrim, really the Shulchan Aruch says you should be machmer if it's no big deal. But if it's a hefsin maruba or a big deal for you, then you could be mekel with the me'ikar adin. That's just, so there's a little bit of a difference. Okay? Let's, right. So certainly for Ashkenazim, make sure if you're going to take raw onions, you know which pot you're putting it in. If you want to use those onions for meat or for liver or for a milk dish, it's important, very important to know. Okay, now, did we continue?
And this Torah makes no difference whether it's Heta or Issa.
Oh boy. Yeah, let's go on. What?
This halacha makes no difference whether it's Heta or Issa, even though he says it's Issa.
Makes no difference if it's heter or issa. Yeah, but depends what the case is. I'm not sure exactly what you're...
Well, you said the case just now of onions from Fleishi to milk.
Yeah, let's talk after, because no one's going to understand. Okay, let's see if we could just do Zayin real quick. You want to do Zayin real quick? We'll do it. Finish. Zayin. Kedera shehi belua mi basar. Now, if you have a pot and it has iser belua inside, the chalav shenitbashel ba biyachad o bazer charzeh. You have a pot and you cook with it meat and milk together, or you cook in it meat, and then an hour later you cook milk with it in the same pot. Makes no difference, it becomes basar b'chalav. And if you do it separately, it becomes basar b'chalav the second time you use it. Because the first time it was heter, then you add the milk, in our case, an hour later, that's when the basar b'chalav isser starts. So now that's when the clock of 24 hours start, after the second time. V'kodem shavar alayla, so Normally, you would just wait 24 hours and it's fine. So here he adds a new twist. V'kodem she'avar alayla. Avar alayla achas huchamu b'mayim chashivas bat yoma ad shetisha milit mishach shehuchamu b'mayim. So now, let's say hour number one, you put the first second, you put meat. Then an hour later, you put milk, and you're cooking it, right? Even if it's separately. Now the pot is basar b'chalav. Now an hour later, you just boil clean, plain, clear water. You emptied it from the meat and milk, and now it only has water. Now, do you wait 24 hours from hour one or 24 hours from hour two when you reheated water in there? So he says you have to start the 24 hours from the water, because the water is cooking with the basar b'chalav, and it all has a din of chanan. Now this is a chumrah, or it's a chiddush in Tosfos, but he says it's not clear from the Gemara, but Tosfos says you start the clock from the water, because it all becomes asr together, it all becomes chanan together, and that's the halacha. Again, not everyone necessarily agrees on the level of the Gemara Rishonim, but that's the halacha. And that's why we'll see the nafkamina. Oh, I pointed that out. Haggah says, "Aval im avra layla mutter." But we learned that according to Rashi and Rabbeinu Taam, all you need is the nighttime to turn it into pagam, eino ben yomo. So he puts the two together. It's like a din of sveika. So therefore, maybe you hold the halacha is like 24 hours. Maybe it's overnight time. Overnight time, and or it's you go after only from that first hour when you actually use the isser together. So anyway, so if you're going to cook the plain water after the morning, after Amud Shachar, so then you don't have to start the clock starting from in the morning when you used water. You go back to when you used it with our case of milk and meat. And therefore, let's say you cook the morning, the first day you do meat, and then overnight, in the morning you do milk, but it hasn't been, it's been overnight, but it's still within 24 hours. So the clock starts from, wait a second. I'm not sure how to read this here. Anyways, v'hu adin b'chol yisurim lefi mai dekaimerlan b'chol yisurim chatichas nasas nevela, and the Ramah just points out that again the Shulchan Aruch only holds a basar b'chalav. Do we say chanan? The Ramah says it's also by shari yisurim. So this thing of cooking shari yisurim of chanan with and then you heat up water, starting the clock. So you restart the clock from heating up the water, even by shari yisurim, according to the Ramah. But this chumrah of reheating up the water, because it's based on chanan, doesn't apply to shari yisurim according to the Shulchan Aruch, only by meat and milk. L'makom hefsed yesh lahatir b'kai gavna b'shari yisurim b'chol inyan rak sheyeh me'et le'et mizaman b'shel ha'isr. But he points out that with all these chumrah opinions, that if it's hefsed, and the Taz points out even a little bit of hefsed, a difficulty, a small one, then you could be makel like by the case of shari yisurim, and then you can hold like the Shulchan Aruch to be more makel. And I think we'll stop there. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Fine.